Hello everyone. Hello my colleagues, my dear colleagues from Romania. It feels good and warm to be together because I think that we are in a battle that no one could have expected. I have to say that being a scientist, after 30 years of career as a director of research in genetics, after having had many honors, whether in France, as a director of research at the French NIH, which is actually the highest position one scientist and one researcher can dream of, after having been rewarded by the United States as an Eisenhower Fellowship, by an Eisenhower Fellowship, which is a very prestigious program, after having been awarded a number of prizes, scientific prizes, but also from the Korea, together with Nobel Prizes, I have to say that I am extremely shocked by the fact that I have to change and adapt from the Academy of Science, which is normally the place that I should belong to, because it is my community, and it has to remain our community where we can speak freely about science, and if people disagree with what I say, then it's time for debate, but not for exclusion. Exclusion is a sign of extreme weakness, and I am very sad that Romania has somewhat attacked French government in the sense that they consider that being a French director of research from the French NIH, yes, retired, but still it's a tenure position, so it's a position for life. How come they had to cancel this meeting? So thank you for all the people of Romania who feel for the situation, because we all know that it is an attack not only to science, but an attack to freedom. I very warmly thank the fact that all the people reacted very positively and could face the situation into hosting me into this parliament, although I have to say that the talk I will give to you is only about science, is not about politics. So you see how things are, it's not the right thing. Damien is going to give you a present from Klaus Steger and myself. Klaus Steger is a scientist, a molecular biologist from Hungary. He is now in Germany, and we wrote together a little flyer that summarizes why we think that mRNA, what I call mensonger RNA, for liar RNA, because it was a lie, and we will see how they have been lying to us, should be arrested, and we say that it is a game over. And to that respect, with this flyer, I got the help of German doctors who published this flyer. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, Damien, so much. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone, for hosting me here. Of course, what else than starting with UNESCO? I would dare saying it in Romanian. Please apologize for my poor pronunciation. Rațiunea e nebunia omului tare. Rațiunea omului slab este nebunie. And I think that you will understand that it's quite the right timing to say that. So I, Dr. Alexandra Henrion-Caude, Director of Research in Genetics, tenured scientist and professor at the French NIH for 27 years and retired from the NIH, currently Director of SimplissimA Research Institute, declare no conflict of interest. Due to this lack of conflict of interest, I have dared sharing my views publicly since March 2020 about the origin of the virus, the unscientific measures, of which the vaccines, the PCR, the masks, the lockdowns, the treatments, or rather the lack of treatments, and the solidarity that we needed to build or rebuild together, and I got inspired by what was done in history with the human chains, and the human chains where I am proud to say that I somehow prompted the epidemic of human chains in France, which was about taking the hands of one another and raise the hand to the sky because we would be stronger together, at least 2 or 3, and the common sense in regards to hygiene, to the risk of the PCR test, to insert something like that, and a number of other risks. So this is about my freedom. In this slide, you have not only my expertise, because I was happily well-trained, whether in a Harvard Medical School or in France at the NIH, French NIH. And it is also my luck to be free to speak to you. So indeed, it is an unusual thing that we have gone through. I feel extremely sorry for Ian Orel Pop, because I understood that his health was quite poor at the moment, and that on the top of that he thinks that it may be related to the mRNA vaccine injection that he took. It is really sad that he is not here, because he would have learned a lot. And it is really sad that Robobete got into the story as well. So I don't understand why these people don't come to me and discuss and insult me instead of, just going through what I achieved and discussing further. So let's go back to what happened a couple of years ago, 2020. We get these images from Wuhan. These images from Wuhan, I have to say that they were international. They were in France, in the UK, here, I guess. And we could see several people lying down in the street. So I prompt you to, when you see that kind of images, to have a scientific attitude. Let's reflect on what can happen. What can be happening that takes place here? The strange idea that they had was that it would come from a virus. Why is it strange? Because when you are sick, when you feel sick, you normally don't go out, not to the stage that you are so weak that you're going to fall down dead in the street a couple of minutes after. So it was to me a very strange idea. So the hypothesis that I thought would be compatible with simultaneous people falling dead in the street were a nuclear bombing. Apparently there was no nuclear bomb and radiation, as you can see. Asphyxiating gas, but then those people would have fallen dead as well, and they were not, because they were wearing little masks. Lethal radiation, again, for lethal radiation it could be, but we don't have any evidence. Poisoning, maybe, or actors. They could as well have been actors. The jury is still out. We don't know what was about these images. What we know is that no one talks about it anymore. And this is very strange, because we do not have an explanation for that. The COVID virus, it was, I have to say that being a geneticist, I can tell you that looking at a sequence of a virus is not so lengthy. It doesn't take you over 2 years here in science, here in nature. 2 years for analyzing the genome and realizing that instead of saying it was of natural origin, maybe the chances that it wouldn't be natural would be almost nil, as say virologists. How come looking at a sequence would take scientists 2 years to find something that one could see at once? And you can even see it yourself. How can you see it? Because you do an alignment, and suddenly you see something very peculiar. In all viruses that we had, all those SARS-CoV, this one was really different. This was just like the nose in the face. Everyone could see it. Everyone could face that something was taking place here. And analyzing it, I can tell you that as early as January 2020, we could analyze that it was on top of that an interesting sequence which was the key to human beings, and that as a signature was the fact that it could not be a natural origin. Unfortunately, very few of us could identify this, although you can today, and it took another 34 months to reveal the obvious. I really wonder why, because we had had so many articles in the that was basically bringing the same thing. April 2020, SARS-CoV-2, they realized that it would have this behavior that, of course, would put in danger human being. May 2020, same. We report that SARS-CoV-2 has evolved a unique S1, S2 cleavage site, meaning this is a signature that very likely it was built in a lab. October 2020, might SARS-CoV-2 have arisen via serial passage through an animal host or cell culture? You don't do cell culture in nature. Cell culture is performed in a laboratory. So all that taken together, we had many possibilities of understanding something that we were not allowed to say. We were threatened. And why my colleagues shut their mouth down, I believe, is because of fear. Why would they be scared? Not by the virus itself, rather than the fact that on March 7, 2020, they published in Lancet and in Science an article saying that some scientists that later on we found had many connections, 26 out of the 27 who signed that paper had actually a link to Chinese labs. Okay? So they should have displayed that at the time, but they didn't. They just threatened our community in a very strange manner, saying those who doubt that the COVID-19 has not a natural origin should be strongly condemned because those are conspiracy theories. Then science built up and they say strong condemnation of rumors and conspiracy theories about origin of coronavirus outbreak. Here, you have the key to understand why most of us shut their mouth up. And it is very sad, and it's actually going on and on and on, and it has to stop. So I just hope that my colleagues would be strong enough as to say, hey, I didn't dare saying at that time that the virus was very likely of human origin. Let me be strong enough today as to go and say all the lies that we have been told. One other lie was about this pandemic, okay? So the condemnation of the scientists was on March 7th. A couple of days later, the WHO declares COVID-19 as a pandemic. Okay, this declaration of the pandemic was the justification. What the editor-in-chief of Lancet said about it a couple of months later on is that he said, that was the title, huh? COVID-19 is not a pandemic. He dared saying it, he dared writing it in his paper, and he said something which was very interesting. No matter how effective a treatment or protective a vaccine would be, the pursuit of a purely biomedical solution to COVID-19 will fail. Wow, thank you. It is very strong. It is in Lancet. It is coming from the editor-in-chief of Lancet. And he said basically that COVID-19 was not a pandemic because he called it a syndemic. Syndemic meaning that several things were taking place. Basically, he acknowledged that they were not only about your health status. That is what he said here. That maybe actually the stress that we were going through, all that would be together, I say, the epidemic of madness would take place in this syndemic. So I like the word pandemic that was coined by an American who asked us to in a documentary in the United States early on, because pandemic has somewhat the connection to what was said in the past. So the 2020, what kind of syndemic was it? When there was absolutely no excess mortality in most countries. Those are data that I screenshotted from Euromomo, which is a demographic database from different countries: Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Greece. And what you see here is the year 2020. Is there an excess mortality in Austria for the whole year? None. In Denmark, none. In Estonia, none. In Germany, nothing. In Greece, nothing. In Finland, nothing. In France, yes, something happened, and in Belgium as well. I don't see it here, but in Belgium something happened. Yes, here. Okay. So what this means is that the world has been arrested for zero excess mortality in most countries. And when I say most countries, it is really most countries. So are pandemics life-threatening? One wonder, it's like, let's go step by step. So the answer to that question is no. And the reason is not about the fact that pandemics are dangerous or not dangerous, it's because of the definition. In 1999, the pandemic was, the world pandemic by the World Health Organization used to have a criteria of serious morbidity and mortality. But in 2005, something happened that they changed the definition, lacking the possibility, the risk of morbidity and mortality, and replacing it by increased and sustained transmission. Okay, and in 2009, they went even further, lacking the geography this time, and saying pandemic is only a matter of having at least one other country in a different WHO region. Okay, now we have the understanding of how they said that we had a pandemic. But next time you hear about we are going through a pandemic, don't panic, because now you know about the definition and you know that you should go on with your life in a natural manner, assessing what is going on, but go on with your life. Second point, in 2019, there was no alert, yet SARS-CoV-2 circulated. And this is also very important, obviously, because nobody knew that in 2019, this SARS-CoV-2, so dangerous, was circulating in Barcelona, in Italy, in France, in Brazil, in the United States. And those articles coming from different teams, different countries, assessed the situation in a different manner, whether in the West Edge, in the West Quarter, through PCR, and they assessed the situation, but also, more importantly, by assessing the antibodies in patients. And they could, in France, for instance, find that 11% of the individuals had antibodies of patients. It was in a department of neurology, I think, or cancerology. They had antibodies against SARS-CoV-2. This is back in 2019. So, of course, nothing happened because at that time, in 2019, medical doctors treated their patients. That is the big difference. In 2020, they were not allowed to. This article is an old article from 2008, coming from a man you probably are familiar with the name of him. It is Fauci. What Fauci published is that in case of a pandemic, whether the Spanish flu or the pandemic in 1957 or 1968, the predominant role for the patients to die was actually not the virus, but the bacteria. So basically, you would be a little bit weakened by the virus, and then what really caused the death was the bacteria. And his conclusion was that pandemic planning needs to go beyond addressing the viral cause alone. End of the story. We already knew since 2008 that if we wanted to come over any sort of viral pandemic, we needed antibiotics and not vaccines. So what I did when all this took place in France, I don't believe in institutionalized health policy. I believe in local policy because when you consider health, you have to consider the genetic background of people, you have to consider where they live, what they drink locally. So I analyzed the French data, looking at what was going on in terms of excess mortality set by COVID. And what I found is that indeed, in March, some departments had a peak in March, but then when the peak was really high, there would be nothing after. When they had a little peak, very weak in March, then they would have a secondary peak in winter. And when they had almost no peak at all in March, then there will be some catch-over in the winter. What those three graphs means is that immunity, natural immunity, worked. But unfortunately, I was not supposed to say that, and that article I could never publish, because obviously it was somewhat of a piece of evidence that natural immunity worked. About the COVID-19 disease, I did something very wrong as well, which was actually at the time that the CDC would tell us the COVID-19 is about moderate fever and cough. I say, and people were locked down, remember? So they were all packed together. And I said, there are more symptoms that are described, whether ophthalmology, dermatologist, ear, nose, throat, and than the ones that you classically describe. And people should be aware because maybe they're gonna, contaminate one another, and they don't even know that they have their eyes. It's not allergy; it's because of COVID-19. So this is just to show you how predictions were dreadful. From the UK Imperial College prediction, this was the number of coronavirus expected in orange and in gray, and this is the reality. This is what happened, the blue line, okay? End of the story for any prediction. 2020, there has been a complete divorce between World Health Organization and science. Please stay with me because this is very important. At one moment, there has been this divorce, and let's go. May 21, 2020, the British Medical Journal publishes the fact that people who are critically ill with COVID-19 have thrombosis. And one doctor says, the extent of thrombosis we are seeing with COVID is extraordinary. Okay? This means that we have a trouble with thrombosis. What it became from World Health Organization and from Reuters and from all our media, it became that COVID-19 is not thrombosis. Then, forget about it. Don't treat people for thrombosis. Lack of interest for science. So those are the ones that should be thought. Not me. I should be at the Academy of Science. Those people should be aware of the Academy of Science because obviously they were enemies to science. And the same went when they say antibiotics cannot prevent or treat COVID-19. Fake. Another fake, because we knew I was working with cystic fibrosis, and I perfectly knew that azithromycin, for instance, had not only a role against bacteria, but had also a role against viruses. It had antiviral properties. But I was not the only one to know it. It was actually the best macrolide that all the medical doctors around the world would give in case of an atypical pneumonia. This was known against, they thought, our science. So this is to say that it is very interesting for all of us to go back and to dig into those fact checks, because in those fact checks, they literally say what you should not be looking at. And by preparing this conference, I was interested to read that Italy defeats the so-called COVID-19, which is nothing but diffuse intravascular coagulation. And it is true. We've known that so many people died from this diffuse intravascular coagulation. Italian doctors have disobeyed the WHO, prohibiting the autopsy of corpses from the coronavirus. How can the WHO prohibit the autopsy of an unknown disease? This is against the enemy of science. This is against the enemy of medicine. It is being the enemy of knowledge and of hope for people to recover. Basically, they said that they have discovered that it is not a virus, but it was a bacteria that caused the death and the formation of blood clots. How surprising, given all the science that we had in the past. You see how the science can be very consistent sometimes when you listen to it. And in fact, what we really found is that basically every single drug you would use would work on COVID. The only one that really did not work and that would increase the risk is the one that you were said to take. The acetaminophen. I don't know how you call the paracetamol, okay? So this one was known to increase the risk, and it was actually said not to be given to all people, but too late, obviously. But whether from zinc to exercise, to probiotics, to diet, to quercetin, to, you name it, you had antihistamines. Basically, you would do something to treat yourself, you would have more chances. Something that was a shame as well, I've been working a lot with PCR myself all my career. PCR is a very useful tool, but has never ever been a tool for diagnosis. On top of that, I tried myself to develop the PCR test at first, because I was just like, okay, that's interesting, maybe it will be a help in the diagnosis. But then I immediately stopped, because what I found was they had not even a control, a positive control, because they lacked the virus. So basically, we are saying that the PCR test that was displayed worldwide to say whether you had or not COVID did not even have a positive control we are used to have, which is having the virus and saying, okay, this is a positive control, this is my negative control, I can go on. Not to mention the fact that the specificity was completely wrong. Instead of taking the specific parts that is really specific to this coronavirus, they use parts that are very common and source of finding positivity when it is not positive. Therefore, you are not surprised to see this beautiful nature communication that no one talked about. It was published in November 2020. In November 2020, the game was already over by this publication, where they screened 10 million of Chinese people. They found 300 positive people, but those positive were asymptomatic. Interesting. Okay, so yet they went further and they say, okay, let's look at the virus. Since they are positive, we are going to find the virus in them. Zero finding. So then they say, okay, come on, I'm going to check on the contact of these people, the family, the relatives, and I'm just going to look if there is a virus in them. No virus. So this was published in Nature Communication to the reading of everyone, every scientist, and nothing took place. On the contrary, and this is another divorce. We have had the World Health Organization in Science, and then there was another divorce within the scientific community where facts stopped being facts. What do I say here? This is an abstract from Science News of the article that I just showed you. Based on these findings, saying that they found no viable virus in the asymptomatic cases and the close contact of these positive asymptomatic cases, their conclusion is that these findings do not show that the virus can't be passed on by asymptomatic carriers. It's exactly the contrary to their observation. How can you go on saying, after screening 10 million people, you go on saying, oh, maybe you can pass it and you can be asymptomatic and pass it on people. So this is a very bad part of our world history when facts stopped being facts. So we faced an unprecedented time, and they took advantage of these facts not related to the facts to go into the largest health experiment of the 21st century, which we need to stop at once. It is a genetic experiment, and now I will go on telling you why I think that we need to stop it at once and that I need your help to stop it. There has been a complete disconnection from reality. Disconnected from ethics, respect, there was no informed consent. Again, it was published in December 2020, before they even started the vaccine. Some courageous scientists published this paper saying that given the fact that any coronavirus vaccine were likely to worsen the situation because it would give you antibodies that instead of neutralizing your, sorry, can I go back? Yeah. Neutralizing your, the disease, the virus, it was on the contrary, it would enhance the disease. And this is why a number of us knew that no matter which vaccine, you should not take any vaccine against the coronavirus. In 2022, no anti-coronavirus vaccine had ever been approved, and this is also something important because they went on in their clinical trial in the phase 3, and yet they basically injected everyone when it was not approved. So we were really into an experiment. It was disconnected from a goal of efficiency and of safety. Why do I say that? Because the choice was those vaccines, as they call them, they were developed against an ancestral SARS-CoV-2, which is the Wuhan variant that never circulated in Europe. So what we're saying again is that anyway, the choice was wrong. But on top of that, they choose the hotspot of variability, because whether for mutation, all these little triangles are the possibility of having mutation in the spike protein, or whether through glycosylation, which are sugar that you add to this spike protein, which is in red here. All this means that you should never, because okay, now how can antibody access this SARS-CoV-2 if it has sugar on it? So basically they chose some part of the virus which anyhow would never have worked and would be completely inefficient. Now about safety, we already knew, so you just take a little fish, a zebrafish, and you give this poor little zebrafish some fragments of SARS-CoV-2 protein, of the spike protein, and unfortunately your zebrafish becomes extremely sick from all its organs and eventually die. So we knew about the fact that it was the wrong idea. There had been a complete disconnection from immunity status, and typically they would take 52,000 employees, 9% were previously infected, 71% were vaccinated, and the conclusion that was that both previous infection and vaccination provide substantial protection against COVID-19. Vaccination of previously infected individuals does not provide additional protection against COVID for several months. So we should have done what Damien is used to do whenever you have a disease, or just check about the immunity of the people. And on top of that, we knew that group O, blood group O, for instance, would be protected from COVID. We also knew that people who have their immunity compromised are not those ones who produce antibodies, so stop injecting them all the time. So all that was again completely disconnected from the immunity. Complete disconnection from adverse events. And that was known in 2021. In 1 year, using the World Health Organization database, there were already 10 times more adverse effects than the cumulative adverse effect of the flu vaccine over 50 years. In 1 year, as compared to 50 years, so there should have been over. On top of that, you add that the VARS US database, more than half of the deaths reported over 30 years. So you take the database, you take 30 years, and you look, half of those deaths are due to COVID-19 vaccine. Once again, we should have stopped. So obviously with all that, we have understood that unfortunately, vaccine was really forced into our humanity, to the extent that over 70% of the world population, they say, has received at least one dose of those COVID vaccine. Billion doses have been administered, and since August 2024, our world in data has stopped tracking the number of injections. Why is so? Because basically what happens is here, and you see it, when it was mandatory, when they put so much pressure to force it into our humanity, they got the first dose, the second dose, the third dose. But then when the Omicron was dominant and that they eased the restriction, people would stop taking it. Then when they stopped the end of travel requirements, people stopped taking it. If it was efficient, I can tell you that people would have gone on taking it if they liked it. So that's why I said that they were forced into our humanity. No. So my book goes here in Romania. Why is it so? Because when you look at our world in data, there is a resistant country here and here, with the lowest vaccinated people in Europe, which is Romania with 28%, as compared typically to Italy, where basically they have reached 85% of the population. I don't know whether it's true or not, this 28%, because it is likely, when you look at the data, that they have ceased reporting to our world in data, because maybe Romania was ashamed, but they should have been proud, because they couldn't really push and reach the kind of numbers that they had in other countries. So I'm very, very glad to be here in Romania, because I want to congratulate the people of Romania for having been different from their little neighbors around. So my answer to all those facts that were not looked at facts is knowledge to all. This is my proposed antidote against the genetic raping that we have gone through. And this is why I wrote this book, is really to share my knowledge at a level that everyone could understand it. I do the commercial of my book in a very natural manner, because not only I know that once you've read the book, you are definitely vaccinated for the rest of your life, just by reading. No needles, no nothing, no mRNA, no nothing. So this is one good thing. And the other thing is that I gave all the money I got from the sending of this book. On top of being kicked out from the academy, I'm being kicked out of the Parliament. Okay. It's long days, actually. I'm just going, okay, I will go finish with that sentence, that slide, if I'm allowed.
Yes.
Once, okay. So for over 5 years, COVID-19 was synonymous of forced vaccine or forced injection, with unwary and unethical products that were contaminated, whether with DNA, whether with metal, and this was, over 1 million of those were distributed by Japan because they had identified some contamination that they said was about metal, but how come they were the only one to have it when the doses were actually manufactured in Spain? Based on a dangerous technology that we have known for over 20 years of experience that it was a dangerous technology. With false and changing promises. Remember, they say, get yourself injected maybe once or twice, and then it's okay. And then 3 doses, 4 doses, 5 doses, 10 doses, and they go on. Changing promises, you'll be protected. Your transmission is arrested. No, transmission is not arrested. But then maybe the worst form of COVID, but no, in fact no. And they would change their promises all the time, with exclusion of any other treatment. And this is very awful, because this is the pivotal argument on which that they used for saying, because we have no other treatment, which is false because you just saw that every single molecule that was but paracetamol would work. They say, because of the lack of treatment, we can have an emergency authorization of this injection. So this was really the key to moving on onto a product that was developed in a crazy manner. With defectuous pharmacovigilance, because even if the database would identify that they had a problem, yet they would not report it in a manner that they would stop it In some countries they did, but not enough. And last but not least, with a flawed risk-benefit analysis that was not taking account of age, not of the disease, not of the status of immunity, and not, worst of all, on the adverse reactions. With that, I will end, and thank you for your attention, hoping that I will give the rest of my talk, and you will have also the possibility to read through my Game Over flyer. Thank you very much.